Hey, what's up, guys? I'd love to introduce my friend Gareb Shamus.
Hey, everyone.
Gareb flew in just for you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so have a seat. So Gareb and I met at a mastermind a good friend of ours, Joe Stolte, put on. It's an AI mastermind, and we hit it off, and I invited him to join us here, and I'm really grateful. You bounced between 3 or 4 cities.
Yeah, yeah. San Francisco here, and then a last minute change from back to New York to LA. So,
Yeah.
and then New York.
Yeah, so he's the founder of Wizard Magazine and Comic-Con. And so the first event that you put together, I was doing a little pre-research, and it said, like, unexpectedly 20,000 people showed up.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
So, Comic-Con at the time was just short for comic convention. It really wasn't a brand or anything. And I had started a magazine called Wizard back in 1990, 91. It was my first job out of college, but I knew how to, I became very fluent on Apple computers and desktop publishing as it was emerging. And by the mid-1990s, my magazine was selling about 400,000 copies a month. And all the other comic book shows, we were like the new up-and-coming kids on the block, and they wouldn't let us do anything fun. So I was like, why don't we just do a Comic-Con, a comic convention, and we'll just invite all of our friends, the movie studios, video game toy companies, all the comic creators, and we'll just let everybody do anything that they want. It'll be just a big party. The magazines were making money, and here's just a way to just create a real great marketing event. And little did we know, 20,000 people showed up. Because it was back in the mid-90s, there was no internet, there was no like pre-sales online, there was none of that kind of stuff. So you didn't know what it was gonna be until people actually started showing up for the show. And we had lines wrapping around the corner. Actually, it was very funny too, because it wasn't like there was like credit card processing, like automation back then, so people would show up with cash. And so I remember, like, in our back room, it literally was like straight out of a casino back room. We had all the money machines counting cash. We had stacks, and we literally had to bring suitcases of cash to the banks back in those days. I mean, it was just like completely unexpected, but it was really amazing.
Suitcases of cash, like when you come back from Mexico and at the border, they're like, wait a minute. Um, so I'd love to, part of the reason I was super excited for him to come is he's been doing partnerships for decades, but just in a different market, and with comic book companies, movie companies, game companies. And I want to kind of hear your evolution, how you discovered partnerships and saw the power of them, how you've harnessed them throughout your career, and we'll dig deeper into that as we go.
Yeah, so what was great was back in the magazine days, all pre-internet, it was one of those times where having a mouthpiece and a voice was very, very powerful. And especially I was a young kid with a massive ego, and I have this demeanor, but I was also like literally relentless. And I always joke that even though I've had success, I walk into a room like this and I think of myself as the biggest failure. And it's because I take a lot of chances. I call, email, text, like so many people to try to do things. And I get more no's or no responses than anybody could fathom. But the people that would want to work with us, those are the people that we invested in. So when Marvel and DC didn't want to do stuff with us, we worked with the third and fourth best comic book company. And even if they had 5 or 6% market share or 3% market share, they had an outsized situation in our magazines. And then what would happen? Marvel and DC had egos, and they'd be like, how could you write about these shitty little companies? What about us? And we'd be like, well, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? You know, because we're doing very well talking to them. And eventually they had to capitulate and start working with us, because what they're gonna let these little companies, you know, get the outsized voice in our product. So that was a very big part of kind of my attitude towards getting things done, was I'm just gonna work really great with the people that wanna work with me and do such a great job that other people are just gonna be jealous. and they're going to want to do it. So if we write about a small independent film coming out, a studio is going to be like, why didn't you write about us? And a small little independent video game or a toy line. The Hasbros and Mattels were like, we can't allow these little companies to get this kind of outsized attention. And then we made it really easy for them. It wasn't like once they came back, it's like, no, you didn't want to work with us. It's like, no, it's okay, so what can we do? But then I also used to take this approach too, where if we didn't break it first, I didn't want any part of it. So we put a lot of pressure on companies, because if let's say they had a new product coming out and they wanted to talk to 5 or 6 other outlets, we would say, then we're not going to cover it at all. And not be covered in our magazine and ultimately at our Comic-Cons was basically death for them. But it was also the best thing for them. So I wasn't trying to do it in such a way that it was bad for them. I was like, we were 95% of the voice of the market, so not working with us would have been bad for them, and working with us is good for them. So this was actually a good problem for them to have. But what happened was, we would always be working with new companies for new things. And that to me was the heart and soul of what we did, was we gave every new company, new artist, new writer, new video game, new toy company, a chance to reach their audience in a way that they could never do on their own. And by having us validate it in print or at our Comic-Cons, it meant the world to them.
So you've done probably thousands of partnerships. What are 2 of the biggest ones you're the proudest of, where you were like, I can't believe these stars aligned and we created XYZ together?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it might have been something to do with like a big movie release. When Christopher Nolan was shooting his first Batman film in Chicago, we had a show in Chicago at the time, and the fans were very, very nervous. They were just coming off of a terrible Batman movie streak, and we were able to get Warner Brothers to get Christopher Nolan to come to the show with Aaron Eckhart and like literally the cast of the what's his name? The guy who played Batman. Christian Bale. We had Christian Bale. We had we literally had the whole cast show up, and I mean, we didn't tell the fans in advance because we didn't want them to know. But the roaring ovation that we got, and Christopher Nolan brought 5 minutes of uncut footage from the film, first time ever. So we not only got picked up, so the studio used us in a way, in a very comfortable, fun, fan-friendly environment to show the footage. And they also kind of used it as a way to take that footage then and show the reaction to the entire media world at large. Look at how the fans reacted to it, because they just came off of a bad Batman film. And then we loved it because, it was, we were in every single news release out there. Every single article ever written about it was this footage that happened at our show. And so that was one of those things that was incredible for them and for us, because everybody knew that this was the place to break that kind of film release and information and bring the celebrities to. And for them, it was great because it was the ability for them to show the world that they're coming back with this big multi-billion-dollar franchise.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that evolution from the start, when these bigger companies weren't directly working with you, so you're working with the people who are happy to be. And the way I kind of view that from a partnership perspective is ping-ponging your way up. So each level, you're just bouncing up a little bit higher and a little bit higher. It was very much like that for me 10 years ago with my first product. Some of the first joint ventures were tiny, but to a list of 1,000 people, and then 1,500, and you just keep bouncing your way up to where like Go High Level just signed on as a client. So you end up like at the top of your market. How long did that take for you?
Well, it's kind of a very challenging slope, because the hardest part is to find people who are your advocates at the other company. So luckily, because we were in comic books and toys and gaming, at those companies we had a lot of fans that kind of loved us behind the scenes. So they'd really kind of push on our behalf. But when we first started back in the early 90s, those people were, this level in the company. They weren't directors or producers or VPs at any level. So they were constantly advocating for us on our behalf. And then also people would kind of use me as a hammer in that situation too, because I was fearless. I'd just call up the CEO of any company. It didn't matter which company it was or who they were. I'd just call them up. And I would play this kind of little trick also, which was because we had the magazines and the Comic-Cons at the time, I'd just call up and leave a message, I want to interview for the magazine. And, I'd get calls back every time. So it didn't matter what studio, what network, what video game or toy company. There wasn't a CEO or head of whatever product that didn't get back to me for wanting to do an interview. And then once I got them on the phone, then it's like, hey, we're trying to get this done. Can you help out? So I could be used very selectively like that. But the key is to be fearless with this stuff. I mean, because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, you want to do to help them in what they do. And I think that's probably been the biggest message that I try to talk about, which is, doing for others. And it didn't matter whether it was a comic book company, a toy company, a game company. I would always do, in my case, I would always do something first. Like I wasn't worried about the reciprocity, whatever. If I would just write about them or feature them or say, hey, come to my Comic-Con, we'll put you on a stage, we'll give you a microphone. And inevitably, once people get into your ecosystem, they're going to want to do more. They're going to see how great you are and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to build. And the key is just get them in the door, whatever it takes, which kind of brings me to a funny analogy. Whenever I see a line to get into places, we used to joke at the Comic-Cons, it's like there should be zero friction between getting people in the door, and getting people past that register. And you got to do whatever it takes to get that friction out. And that's what we would do. We would just take the friction out. Hey, you're already in our magazine. And then I would take literally 50 copies of that magazine and send it to every single person in their company. And everyone would read it. And I would just do that. We had, on my Wizard magazine alone, we had about 8,000 complimentary copies that would go out. And I was sending it out to every single top person at every single studio, network, video game, toy company, comic company. And then it would ultimately wind up on the desk of somebody who cared about it. And then once it wound up there, I got people hooked. And then once we wanted to work with them or reach out, it was a very easy, oh yeah, I've been reading your magazine for years, let's do something.
Yeah, so I want to pull the parallels between these industries. And so there's several here. Number one, you're inviting them for an interview, which anyone with a podcast in here, how many people have podcasts in here? Probably at least half. How many of you guest on other people's podcasts? That would be damn near everyone, right? And so to your point, inviting someone for an interview like that or teeing up being on a show, I always consider the listener like the cherry on top. It's all about the relationship. Armando talks about that a lot too. And so that gets the conversation going. It builds a ton of rapport. And secondly, that positions you to provide value first. It's like always be providing value first, just listening to what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish. And it could be a connection you're providing. It could be a strategy or a tool or something you've solved in your business that would be helpful for them. So there's the value first side. And then by sending out these free magazines to folks, that's the equivalent of like a newsletter where you're getting that consistency that like Steve was talking about yesterday, where like you were sending those, how often were those?
They were monthly, and I had 4 monthly magazines, so every week people getting bombarded, with what we were doing.
So that thing being covered by Steve as well on the exposure points, how much exposure are they getting to you and consuming your content? By the time you're getting them on the phone, like they're very indoctrinated.
Oh yeah.
So,
by the way, we used to call that the mommy factor. because everyone at the time, they were trying to justify what they were doing in their careers by being a comic artist or a video game or toy designer. And by being in the magazine, they could show it to their mom and be like, look, you see, I made it.
My life's going in a great direction, Mom. Look, I'm in a magazine.
But you'd be surprised how many people, are on your shows, on your podcasts, and then show it to somebody else, and they'll do that. They'll use that, to get in a door that they've been trying to get into, for sure.
So obviously you discovered this over time and it probably became natural to you, but did you have a specific framework from when you would do an interview? Like, did these things naturally fall in place, or did you have a exact process you were following to move them into bigger outcomes for everyone?
Yeah, I think back in those days, there weren't these processes. This was before these entrepreneur conventions. I didn't have these kind of conferences to go to. I didn't have the kind of mentors, that I have today. So it was all learning as you go. And I also think that a lot of the stuff that we could talk about now, I was just doing instinctively at the time. And now I could put the right words or phrases together to describe what we did. But there was no way to predict that. People ask me all the time, did I know Comic-Con was going to be that big? And the answer is no. How could I have known, what it was going to be like? But I just know that the idea of getting people together, especially in this case that were disenfranchised, that felt like the losers and the loners and the outcasts together in one place, that we'd all feel comfortable together and we were stronger together. So I just knew the idea that this is what we wanted to do, with not knowing the effect of it. It's only in retrospect can I look back and say, these are the kind of things that we did that helped make us successful.
So I want to lean into the relationship side of this. So, throughout your career and with like movie studios, actors, CEOs, I'm sure relationships have been a really key part of that. What is your philosophy on relationship building, and what are some techniques all of us can learn from in, your journey of doing this?
Yeah, so a lot of times it's not the actual company or individual or that you're going after. It's you got to find who at a company, what's the right area in a company that you need to work with, and hone those kinds of skills. So like with the comic book companies, the marketing people were going to come and go, but I endeared myself to the artists and the writers because they were going to be our biggest advocates. If they had a new comic book coming out, they'd say to the marketing department, I want to do this cover. What are the marketing department's going to say? No, you can't do it. So it didn't matter what the head of marketing or the head of anybody said. If the artists and the writers wanted to do something, they would do it. At the movie studios, it was really the PR people. Like, it was just become friendly with the PR people because they're the ones that are going to get things done because it's their job to get things done, and it's the results that they bring that are going to be how they get judged. So I could talk to the head of marketing, I could talk to the head of the studio. It wouldn't go anywhere. It was the PR people. So in every company that you want to work with, what is the department at that company that's going to be most effective for you? And a lot of times people think it might be the CEO. And I can't tell you how many CEOs I've reached out to that couldn't help me. Friends of mine, like they own the company, they run it, and they can't do shit for me. But somebody 3 rungs down, was able to get everything done for us. And so you got to kind of know. There's a very billion-dollar company that I work with very closely now, and my friend is the CEO. And I know that every time I call him for something, he's going to call, there's a certain person in his company. I know that's his go-to guy. So I just go to the go-to guy because he knows that I can call the CEO at any time and he's just going to give it to him. So I just go right to him. So I think in any organization, there's the right department or types of people to go to versus thinking that it's, always the head of the company.
That's a great point. There's a book I read years ago called Getting More, and it's about negotiating, and it's knowing who the decision maker or action taker is.
Yeah.
And from a joint venture partner perspective, it's getting the warm connection to the person who can help actually get it done, or build a relationship and hand it up the ladder for that decision maker. fun little side story, like my relationship with Leslie on the team was lining up. She was booking the joint ventures for Brian Tracy, and it was like 9 years ago. And I was like trying to line up a joint venture, and she was like, well, we can't mail the whole list, but we can do it to a Facebook group. And I knew it wouldn't be very successful because Facebook group promotions like that don't work well. And but I did it anyway because I knew she'd sit in on the presentation. And then she's like, this is super good. We should mail the whole list. I'm like, that's a great idea. So like to your point, it's going to the person where you can get the attention and build the relationship, and then between you leverage that to the benefit of everyone. So, okay, so beyond his legacy in Comic-Con, you're also an artist.
Yeah.
And so you have some really innovative things too. Like he's created this whole card collection with specific like art tied to NFTs, and you have like the only patent tying those things together. Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I've retired from the Comic-Con business. My brother and I have produced 200 Comic-Cons. We've probably sold over 5 million tickets. We've had, countless billions of impressions, from our shows. And we've also had, we haven't just affected the geek and nerd industries, but I think almost every single industry that has a consumer audience has been kind of affected by that and have kind of Comic-Conized their events and their shows and stuff. But when I got out of the business, we were working with all the studios and all the agents and managers, and they didn't like the fact that we were not producing events anymore because we were a very big source of income for the talent. So they were like, what can you do? So my brother and I, we were very big in the trading card business growing up. I collected sports cards and comic books as a kid, and still a big card collector out there. And so we decided to do celebrity autograph trading cards. And so I brought some with you to kind of give you so this is kind of what they look like. And they come encapsulated in the plastic holder. This one is signed by Robert De Niro. It's hand signed. So we did a private signing with Robert. And then all the cards have unique QR codes, different foil stampings. They're notarized. They come encapsulated like this. But it turns out that I'm also so we've got dozens of celebrities. We're working on sports athletes, Ronaldo, Messi, Nadal, you name it. We're getting access to everyone.
Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah, we did Picard. But then I also happen to be a professional artist. So my brother says to me, can I do a trading card size painting? And I said, yes. So I started doing this, one of my pieces of art. So then I made a trading card size painting. And then the same companies that encapsulate trading cards like Pokemon cards or baseball or basketball cards, I had them create a special holder for me just for art. And so we're going to be completely changing the art world. Here's another one that a friend of mine did. This is a Batman oil painting as Lego, a Lego Batman oil. So we're going to be, we've already started reaching out to literally hundreds of artists to start creating fine art trading cards. And we're gonna revolutionize the art world, because the art world is it's a $60 billion business. It's twice as big as coins, comics, and cards combined. But there's no peer-to-peer trading in the art world. So any painting over a few hundred or a few $1,000, you would never buy from somebody randomly online because it might be fake or not real. But having peer-to-peer sales in the card market and comic books and coins made those industries explode. So it's exciting.
Yeah, so I want to talk about your strategy of lining up the first domino. So all of us in our sales process, in joint venture partnerships, having 2 or 3 big wins, big players that once you've made it through their gateway, no one else takes the time to do the deep vetting, because you're like, if you're good enough for these people, you're sure as hell good enough for me. I know that's been a strategy you've taken with this, and I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so the hardest part of the business is always the 0 to 1, as we all know from the Peter Thiel book and how he describes it. But so the key is, how do we build this into something that everybody in the world is going to want? There's 25 million artists out there. So the first key was literally just me doing it, right? Like, how else was I going to show all my artist friends what needs to be done other than me actually doing it? So it took a long time for not only me to paint this, but to get the company to actually encapsulate it so that I could actually create the right presentation for it, do the right branding and packaging. It's the star cards are called star picks, the art cards are called art picks. So we created all of our branding and logos so that I could finally show it to other artists and say, this is what I want to do. Because most people, as much as we think they do, they don't have imaginations. So you could describe whatever you want to them, and I clearly hit a nerve there, but it's right. We all know that. So unless they see it right in front of their face, they don't know what they're looking at. So it was for me to demonstrate what that was. Now I'm going to show it to all the people that I think could influence that market. So I've been showing it now to very big art collectors, very big art dealers, and I've been going into artists and saying, hey, wouldn't this be cool if we did this with you? And you don't need as much as you think to make it work. So I'll give you some examples. Like this guy that does the Batman oil painting. He's got about 50 or 60,000 followers on Instagram, but a lot of other artists follow him because he's so talented. So once he starts showing on social that he's doing these cards like this, there's going to be a lot of artists that he's friends with that are going to be like, holy shit, where'd you get this done? How do you do that? And then he'll be able to refer them to us. There's a woman that I'm going to be talking to. She's got about 600,000 followers on Instagram, a famous artist. She's also that type of artist that a lot of other artists follow. So once we start working with her, we'll do that. I have a friend, I decided to go after the #1 guy, probably the #1 artist in the world that most people haven't heard of, but they've seen his work. His name is Devon Rodriguez. He's got 35 million followers on TikTok. So I'm going to do a cards with him where he's going to show him drawing them, put it on TikTok, and then we sell it. And it doesn't take a lot of those kind of things for other people to be like, oh, wow, if they're doing it, I should be doing it too. And that's what it's going to be. It's going to be the follow the leader. And again, there's a lot of artists I want to work with that haven't gotten back to me. They're not sure. They don't know. They got to talk to somebody. But like, I don't care. They'll eventually come in. Going back to the same strategy of earlier, who wants to work with me? And I'm just going to work with those, and we're going to do a great job. And those people are going to get my attention, by the way. So I'm working very closely with artists that most people never heard of, but they're going to get my attention because they're willing and they really want to do this with me. I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, you got my attention now. If we don't do this in the next 6 months with me, you're not going to get my attention, because when we're working with 10,000 artists, I'm not going to be able to give any single person the kind of attention that I can give you now, because I got to get it going. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the strategy. It's kind of putting all that. And then the one last thing is the marketing side of it. So there was a time in comic books where comic books weren't graded and encapsulated like that. So the company that does the encapsulation on my cards is the same company that I helped get started in the comic book world. And so I wrote the playbook on how to get things encapsulated in an industry, like where comics they were anti getting things encapsulated in these plastic holders because you couldn't read them anymore, to an industry where you won't buy a comic book of any value without it being in a plastic holder and encapsulated and graded like that. So what changed, right? It was like, so what we did was we wrote about it in our magazines, we featured them at our Comic-Cons, and then one of the key things was we got the company to set up at all of our Comic-Cons to take submissions and to show people, to physically show people. And the art world is very much like the comic book world in that there are art shows and art fairs all over the world all the time. So we're going to just copy and paste the playbook from 30 years ago and say, here's an industry that doesn't know about grading in its business, even though grading or encapsulating collectibles is very popular. And now we're going to go to art fairs and show people and take submissions, and that's where artists could submit stuff to us. So we're going to go out to people and make it very, very easy for that to happen. And I already know it works because I did it 30 years ago. And in today's world, everything is easier and more accelerated.
Yeah, so that's the reason I love having some diversity in all of our markets and ways we can support each other, because it's taking something you see in one market and industry and just your awareness of it and how it works, overlay it on a different industry so that you can get a similar benefit. So that I think that's cool. So also, I've learned over time that if you don't tell people things they won't know, which sounds obvious, but like I was chatting with a guy for like 35 minutes, and deeper into the conversation, he's like, "Oh, I helped take Infusionsoft from 3 million to 100 million," and I was like, if he would have told me that earlier in the conversation, I would have been paying more attention the whole time, right? So it's, as you do get these domino players, like, and you're just taking your wins on the way, have you consciously positioned those things in conversations or teeing them up so you're able to take the win? Because again, if you don't tell them, they're not going to know. So take the win and tastefully position it, because as we describe what we do, we're handing people the frame through which to view you through. So it could be consciously done in a way where they can actually see how you can serve and support and the caliber you're playing. How have you done that?
Yeah, so I have a very interesting technique. I'll share it with you, which is I'm very good at sharing my vision with people. And I like to tell people what I'm working on, not just now, but where I think it's going to go in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. So even though, I've described how I'm very methodically doing something right now, I've also described how I want to work with art dealers and galleries and art shows and 25 million artists out there. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually implanting in your brains what I'm looking for, what I want to do, who I want to work with, and how I want to do it. And if I said to you, next week I'm doing this, and next week I'm doing that, nobody would be thinking about like what they could do or how to help me or what I need to do. But by throwing it out there, all of a sudden now, people think about, oh, I know a great artist. They've got 65,000 followers on Instagram. They would love this, right? And you're all going to go home, and maybe a couple of you be like, oh, I've got an artist friend that would love this. Oh, I got one that's struggling. Oh, I live near a gallery. Oh my God, these would look great in their gallery. Oh, I'm friends with this art fair owner, or I know this big collector. Oh my God, if they collect baseball cards and art, why wouldn't they want to collect this, right? So I'm implanting in your brain what I want and what I'm looking for without asking you directly what I'm looking for. And I'm very, very good at that. And I love doing that, even though most people don't know that I'm doing that. And I always joke, and I always try to do something too, which is I look at myself as a moving train. And my train is moving, and we're going fast. And either you're going to get on now, or you're not going to be able to get on later because we're going to be going too fast. But I'm giving you a chance to like get on the train now, because we're going slow enough that you could get onto it. And so anyway, that's kind of a technique, that I learned a while ago, because so many times I used to be, oh, I don't want to share what I'm doing. I want to be too secret. Like, I don't want to give it away. But it's like, but you come to learn that nobody could do it the way you would do it. And even if somebody could do it the way you were doing it, the market or opportunities are so big anyway. Who the hell cares? And I kind of learned that, even from the Comic-Con side. At first I hated competition. I hated other people starting more Comic-Cons and things like that, and there's nothing we could do about it. But very shortly after, I came to realize the more local Comic-Cons there were, the more people were interested in going to a Comic-Con, the more they'd come to me. And the more people that try to start up competing magazines to me, the more they realize, why don't I just buy my magazine, because we were the best. So I came to embrace competition, actually. But in this particular case, I think it's so important to share your dreams and your visions with people, because people want to help. People like, I didn't ask anybody here to help me, but you're all thinking about how to help me in a way, right? So, it's human nature, and it works great.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, that's a really good point of communicating like that. There's that saying, the universe conspires once you commit to something and truly commit to it. I remember the very first Pure JV event that I did. I gave myself 2 months to do it because I was clueless how these things work. And after I committed, like, we're going to do this, people came out of the woodwork to help. Like, I'll build your landing page. I'll do this. I'll mention it to these people. And everything just comes together. So that's something we can all take away. Kind of in closing, what are some key takeaways around relationship building and partnerships that you'd love to kind of inspire us to lean into together?
The biggest one is to enable the people that like you to help you. And I'm probably the biggest advocate of that. And there's a story I'm going to tell that is probably the biggest demonstration of how to unleash the power of your audience to help you and to create the right type of place or opportunity for that to happen. And so when we started the Comic-Con business, every issue of the magazine we would do in our October issue was always our Halloween issue in Wizard Magazine. And we'd write about all the new toys and games and comic books and everything that was Halloween theme we'd put in the magazine, except for one thing, the costumes, because it was all pre-internet. So people would have to take physical pictures of them in their Halloween costumes. They'd print them out, send them to us at the magazine, and then it'd be printed in our December, January issue, because that was the time frame, pre-internet, before people could send us stuff like that. So when we did our first Comic-Con, we told our fans, hey, it was in July, August, and we said, hey, we want to show the costumes in the Halloween issue this year. Can you dress up for us so we could take your picture? Would you do us a favor and dress up in costume first? So we run our first Comic-Con, and probably about 300 people dressed up in costume. And it was unbelievable. You're talking about the mid-1990s here. And they wore their best Wolverines and Spider-Mans and Wonder Womans, like you name it. Like everybody showed up, and it turned out to be the hit of the show. And that was the birth of the cosplay movement, was people dressing up in costume at these events. It was really because we had the magazine deadline. And the key to that was the fans created content for other fans there that all wanted their picture, they all wanted to show up. And it was not anything that we could have done that created that experience that other fans created for other fans. And right after that, there was so many more things that we did at our shows to enable fans to entertain other fans at the event. And I think now more than ever, the future is going to be how you can enable your audience to advocate and to do things that only they could do to your other fans or your other potential fans or advocates or business partners. So I think thinking about how to enable your audience and your fans for other fans, and it goes beyond what you to them, and it's them to them.
Yeah, that creates a movement, and it ties perfectly to this group. This group is not about Bill and me, it's about you and how you can serve each other and the network effect between all the members and participants to support each other. So it's a really poignant point to wrap on. But I want to thank you for being here and contributing. He'll be around hanging out. Come up and start teeing up all your Instagram connections for him. And anyone else, and I'm sure he will be sharing his insights with you in relation to what you're up to. So thank you so much, Gareb.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Nice meeting you all. Appreciate it.